Hi, I'm Connie McLeod. Welcome to Creative Heroes. A creative hero is someone who's living a fully creative life. We're interviewing my daughter today, Jade Th'ng. She's home from Chicago for a visit. Her life's journey is just getting started. Who knows where it'll take her, but one thing we do know is wherever it lands, it'll be a fully creative life.
Hi, I'm Jade Th'ng. I was born into a creative family with two graphic designer parents, you being one of them, Connie McLeod, and Charlie Th'ng is my father. I think my childhood differed from my friends, one, because I naturally was drawn towards the arts, and with having two artistic parents, that was encouraged. I, one, would rather have gone to a art supply store than Toys R Us as a child. And I was constantly drawing or painting or performing or singing, all of which were strongly encouraged. In fact, something that probably made it evident that I was different than my friends was the fact that when they would come over to our house and use my art supplies and my watercolors and mix the colors, I would throw a fit. So we had to have separate Jade art supplies and friend art supplies. I think that was a little sign of what was to come. One, that I was a little bit of a diva, and two, that my interests really, like, I could care less about dolls or playing outside even. I really just was always making things my whole life. Also, I was always that kid that would bring just a bin of art supplies to the slumber party. Instead of, stuffed animals and pillows, I'd be like, all right, we're gonna do clay now. And I would lead activities. I was always just pushing my artistic agenda on my friends, which luckily they were pretty good with it. I'm not 100% sure if being multi-ethnic did play into me being an artist, but it probably did because, you do feel unique against your peers. I did grow up in a predominantly white school, and even though I went to a really diverse high school, I always kind of stood out just by the way I looked, and luckily I have the personality type where I like standing out. When I was a teen, I really got into particular phases of crafts. I was very into sewing, which I'd already played around with a lot just because my grandmother sewed, and I would play with her scraps and make clothes for my Barbie dolls, and it was already an interest that I had picked up. And then one of my friend's grandmothers gave me some legitimate sewing lessons, and I took it to Hancock and learned how to take it up a notch, more advanced sewing. I made a Renaissance Fair costume when my Girl Scout troop went to the Houston Renaissance Festival. And I always really, when I was into something, just went in completely, and I was obsessed. And when it came to sewing, I would just hole myself up in a room and make purses and skirts and anything that I could imagine. But an interesting thing was that once people wanted me to make, say there was a purse that someone liked, and they're like, oh, I'll take 5 of those. I was not interested in making the same thing over again because that's not creative. It's just churning out the same old stuff. And I just always wanted to be making new and different art. Also, another huge phase, which I guess isn't a phase because I still do it, is I got into jewelry making, another trait that I got from my grandmother, and another thing that I committed myself to completely and obsessively. And with my mom, we started a jewelry business called Naked Girls Designs, and we would have little home shows, and we would do little fairs and arts markets at Women's Hospital for Christmas, and it was a good way to kind of at least make enough money to continue the craft and buy more supplies, and it just kind of supported itself. And the biggest artistic commitment I made was once I got into music. I started on flute, which was great, and eventually switched over to oboe, which I really, really committed to. I did orchestra outside of school. I did honor band and orchestra, honor orchestra. And that was when I found something that at the time I felt I was able to really express myself and be fulfilled by, and to the point where I did it in college. So after many years of committing to music, I decided to major in music on oboe. I Had you asked me at 16 what I would be doing for the rest of my life, I would have told you music, which is funny now in hindsight that my road has meandered so much, but it really did prepare me a lot for where I am now. I started as a music major. Things were great. They're what I thought they would be. Spent 4 semesters in that. Towards the end of my second year, I wasn't quite happy with what I was doing. I didn't feel like I was as committed as everyone else around me, even though I know I had natural talent. I just wasn't thriving. And it wasn't until Steve Davison got me on a commercial set when I had an aha moment. And it wasn't even that I wasn't really doing much. I mean, I helped with wardrobe, but I was just very, very low on the totem pole. However, that experience was a moment where I was like, oh my gosh, I was rejuvenated. I was very excited about what I was doing, and I realized I wasn't getting that out of music anymore. So it was a moment where I had to kind of face reality and admit to myself that maybe music wasn't for me. And that was a huge, there were so many tears involved in that decision to you. And people on campus are trying to tell me I should change my major to all these things that I didn't relate to. And I hit this major roadblock, and I didn't know where my life was going to go. And I decided I was just, you know what, I'll just do general studies for the time being. I'll pick 3 minors, which is what general studies is. The major is 3 minors. And I'm just going to choose 3 things that interest me, and maybe I'll change my major later, but I just have to choose now. And I ended up choosing communication studies, film and media arts, and Italian. And at the time, it just seemed kind of like a spontaneous decision. But through changing my major and taking different classes was when I really got to know myself. Through communication studies, I did a ton of performance classes. I took speech. I took performance composition. I took awesome genre classes on different types of film. And through my film minor, I learned a lot about making, movie making and all the ins and outs that go into that, and working on commercial sets. I did get a lot of that work and learned a lot on location and by actually doing things. But the biggest gift from being a film minor was that I discovered screenwriting. And I took it only because it interested me, had no idea that that would be a game changer, but it was. And I started writing a script, and it was funny. And I got so much good feedback, one from my teachers, but also from my classmates, which is important. And I just kind of chased that. And so I took the second level of screenwriting and tried to write something serious and dramatic, and was like, oh my gosh, this is the worst thing that's ever been written. So let me go back to funny. And then the script writing aspect translated into performance, because in my performance classes, we would perform small pieces, and I would always end up writing funny little plays. And really, looking back on it, I was writing sketch comedy. At the time, I didn't realize it. So that really shaped me and prepared me for what I'm doing now. However, at the time, it felt like nothing. Italian was such an interesting choice for me as a minor. I took it only because I had bad Spanish experiences. And Italian is such a strong language used in music that I'm like, why not just try Italian? Ended up having a fabulous teacher who was the reason why I continued and made it my minor. And through this experience, I applied just on a whim to be an au pair in Italy, and was matched with a family in Siena, lived there for an entire summer. It was life-changing. It's everything you would hope it would be. I learned a lot about myself as a young woman, being able to travel in a foreign country alone, where I'd only taken 2 semesters of the language. I spent 2 weeks after I au paired just traveling around Italy and Switzerland, and it ended up being one of the best summers that I've ever had. Towards the end of college, I had to think about what my next step was going to be. Because I was loving writing, I decided to take a sketch writing class at the New Movement in New Orleans. So I would drive down every weekend and do sketch and write it with my friends, and it really got me interested in doing that more seriously. I had already in the back of my head kind of known that I did want to get into the film industry, do comedy, but it's hard to kind of figure out where to start with that. So I was like, well, if I think about all my idols, Tina Fey, Amy Poehler, Steve Carell, a lot of my favorite like television people, they all had a phase of their life where they decided to just up and move to Chicago because that is kind of a mecca for comedy, especially improv comedy. I never ever thought I would be doing improv comedy or even consider myself an actress, but I guess technically doing improv makes you an actress. But it really started as an idea, just like in the back of my head, well, if I'm going to take this seriously, I need to relocate myself to a city that takes it more seriously. And so Chicago started something just in my head, and the more I talked about it, it became more and more real. But I talked about it for like a year and a half, 2 years before I made the leap. And the more I realized how seriously I wanted to get into comedy writing and into the comedy industry, I realized I needed to go somewhere where I could train myself for that. So I decided to move to Chicago by myself, live alone, no job, and take improv classes because I loved writing, but I knew even improv would improve my writing and help me get into the community of funny people, really. And it's been a fabulous experience. And I hate saying this, but it's actually been exactly what I planned. I'm the kind of person that's like, it's never going to be what you think it's going to be. But I'm lucky enough that this has actually given me what I thought I needed. And it's kind of lived up to the education that I was hoping to get.
Sound of music, my heart wants to sing every song. Bless me, my heart wants to be like the wings of the birds that rise from the lake through the trees. My heart wants to say like a chime that fly from a church, heart of breeze. Love like a group of tricksy woes of a sperm on its way. You sing through the night like a love who is